In this episode of Grief in Common, we mention death and talk about grief throughout. Hi everyone, and welcome back to season 2 of the Grief in Common podcast run by Winston's Wish. My name's Teigan. I was on episode 1 talking about growing up with grief. I'm 21 and my mum passed away when I was 11. And I want to introduce you to Toby today, who will be joining me. If you want to give a little introduction about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Toby, I'm 18 and my dad passed away when I was 14.
Thank you, Toby. So today we're going to have a little chat about adapting to having step-parents in our lives and maybe parental figures and whether or not that kind of brings in attachments to those figures. And I guess to start off with, I'll ask you the question, Toby. Do you have any step-parents at the moment or maybe a parental figure that's come into your life? And how have you found that, really?
Yeah, I've got a stepdad. My mum married him back in November, but he's been living with us, I think, for about 3 years, maybe 2. Yeah, it was quite an adjustment, really. It's something very new to get used to. But yeah, he's a very lovely man and he does a lot for me and my brother. He's like stepped up as kind of a father-ish figure to help out now that my dad's not here. So it's been quite nice.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Have you found it difficult? I know this is something that I found difficult. I don't know if you feel the same, but the idea of the step-parent and what that means, and then the name step-parent, or I don't know, like stepdad, does that kind of feel a bit weird, or do you find that okay? Do you use that term? Because I know that's also something that's a bit weird when a parent has died.
Yeah, I think I mostly just call him my mum's husband because it does kind of feel a little bit weird. Like, what about you? What do you kind of feel about it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I now have a stepmum, and my mum died when I was 11, so this is quite a new... They got married, I think, a couple of years ago now, but I do remember, because it's more official, I feel like when there's a marriage, it does make it more official. It's not just... Yeah, because I was kind of saying before, my dad's girlfriend or my dad's partner at the time, and I think maybe when there's a marriage, it's like, okay, now maybe I have to say stepmum. I think... For me, sometimes I do say stepmom just for ease with people that don't really know me. But I think if they know me, I'd probably just say her name. But it does feel a bit weird, I think, because it is the word mum. And obviously my mum's not around. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah, it does kind of feel the same because when, like, before they got married, I mainly just called him my mum's boyfriend or, like, her partner, like you said, or with my friends, I just call him by my name. And then when I first started uni back in September, it was kind of like a struggle on whether I should just refer to him as like my stepdad or not, because I didn't want to complicate things with people I just met.
Yeah, and I also think step-parent kind of mainly links to like a divorce, I always think. So I think then there's an assumption that that's the case with you. And then, I don't know, I just feel like it always brings up other awkward things, and obviously it's like the awkward thing of whether you say that your parent is alive or not. I feel like there's always I feel like I've spoken about this before, maybe on the first episode, about whether you say the truth or not. So yeah, I just think it's a bit of a weird one, step parent.
Yeah, because then like you kind of got to figure out when to bring up that it's not a divorce, is the fact that your parents died, and then people usually get quite awkward about that.
Yeah, definitely. So, you said that your mum and your stepdad got married. Did they get married quite recently, did you say?
Yeah, back in November.
Okay, so was that a thing that... Did he introduce the word stepdad, or was it something that your family brought up, or was it something... I know you said you don't really use that term as much, but how did that sort of come about? Was there a conversation about it in your family at all?
Well, my mum has like kind of for a while been referring to him as mine and my brother's fatherly figure. And so it's not been like a thing where everyone's been referring to him as my stepdad. It's more kind of like in the right situations or like when I feel kind of more comfortable saying it, that's when I'll talk about it. I don't know. Has it been the same for you?
I don't know. I think actually my family do use the term stepmom, and also my stepmom has her own son. So I think for him, it's been quite good to be able to call my dad his stepdad because it makes sense, I guess. So yeah, it wasn't really anything that we all spoke about, but I know I've spoken about it with my brother, and I know that he's not always that comfortable with saying the term stepmom because obviously it's using the word mum. But are you okay with me even saying stepdad? Is that okay for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
Are you okay with me saying stepmom with you?
Yeah, it makes sense. Since we're talking about it and we're actually using the term. With your stepdad, does he have any other children? Because I know that might bring in another element.
Yeah, he's got two daughters who are both in their 30s now.
Okay, so they're quite a lot older than you.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting relationship because we get on really well when they're down here, but then they live so far away, so we barely see them.
Yeah, do you find maybe because he's got his, I guess they are older, so I didn't really think about that before, but do you find that because he's got his own children, does that mean that maybe you feel he's not as much of as a fatherly figure to you, or do you feel because they're a bit older, it actually allows you to have that maybe connection that you might miss from your dad? Does that make sense?
I guess, yeah, him being a dad already, like he does have like those fatherly like instincts and like presence in our life. So yeah, it does kind of bring a little bit more like comfort. I don't know if I'm explaining this right.
No, you're fine. That makes sense. Yeah.
Did you say that your stepmom has kids as well? Is it like kind of a similar thing for you?
So she has a son who's a bit younger than me, and he has autism, so he seems a bit younger, like a lot younger than he is. But I think, I don't know, I find I've had a bit of both with this. I think because he does have autism, I think she maybe finds like comfort in having me and my brother around because there's a lot of stuff that he can't do or that he can't always connect with. So she's kind of got that with us, which is quite nice. But then I do think because she does have her own son, who is still, you know, a bit younger than me, sometimes maybe that feels a bit like, oh, she's already got her own son. So she's kind of got her own thing going on, if that makes sense, and her own like maternal role in someone's life. And obviously I think she will sort of fit a maternal role for me always. And she, you know, like similar to your stepdad, like she really has. It's a bit different because I'm a bit older now when they got married, so maybe it wasn't needed as much in a sense of like a maternal parent role. But I will always go to her for advice, and I know that she really cares about me and my brother, so it's quite nice. But I just think with those kind of people in your life, it does always bring out like a complicated thing. I don't know if guilt's the right word, but maybe I'll just use guilt. Feeling a bit guilty about if you do feel close to them or you are using them as that parental figure because, you know, for you, your dad isn't there, or for me, my mum isn't there. Do you ever feel a bit, I don't know, what's the word, conflicted around it at all?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, especially if I'm having like a nice time with him and my mum, then I'll feel bad that like my dad should be here instead. But no, yeah, I definitely do feel like kind of a little bit sense of guilt and conflict.
Would you be happy talking a bit more about when they agreed to get married? Because I know that's quite a big deal. I feel like for my family that was quite a big deal. Did you feel a bit like maybe he was stepping on your dad's toes, if that's the right word, or did you feel, again, maybe kind of go with the conflict thing in your head? Did you feel okay with the idea of your mum and your stepdad getting married, or was that a bit weird for you or your family?
I was a little bit kind of opposed to the idea at first because, like, my mum had very explicitly said to him that, like, he would not be replacing my dad in any of our lives, and he understood that and still understands that. But it still did feel quite, like, final that my dad wasn't here anymore because my mum had found this new guy. And so I think they got engaged maybe like a year or two ago. It wasn't like a massive thing. They just kind of had a conversation about it and then came to me and my brother and then his children as well and asked how we would feel about it, and just kind of told us that they had gotten engaged. And so I think it kind of made it a little bit better that they didn't make it into a big thing because, I don't know, yeah, it felt kind of more calm. What was the experience like for you as well?
Yeah, I feel like kind of similar, really. But also for me, because my dad's actually had quite a few relationships before he married my stepmom. So I think there's people being introduced, possible maternal figures, and then maybe that it doesn't work out. Like, I've had a lot of that kind of experience, which is maybe not necessarily a positive thing. But I think because it happened a few times, I kind of maybe to sort of protect my own self wouldn't really let myself get that attached to them. And then when he was with my stepmom and it was kind of going well, and it took a while, I think, for me and my brother to maybe warm up to her a bit because of how it went. And then I think it was kind of, yeah, a similar thing to you that they didn't make it a big thing when they got engaged. Like, there wasn't this massive thing. It was quite a casual thing, and they just said to us. And I think at that point I was kind of actually okay with it because I knew that she was, really lovely and cared about us. And yeah, but I think maybe if that had happened at a different stage, then it could have had a different reaction, if that makes sense. I don't know if you've had a similar thing at all. Like, had your mum been in previous relationships before then, or was this kind of after your dad? Was that the only one?
No, yeah. Her husband now is the only guy that she'd been with after my dad. And so it was kind of more of a chill thing. Like, I'd only had one other man coming into our life.
Okay, that's kind of interesting because it's the complete opposite for me.
Yeah.
But then I guess that also brings in like another level because it's that was it. That was one person. So maybe that was a big deal. I don't know.
I don't know. Because, like, she'd been married with my dad until he died. And so I hadn't seen her with anyone else until her husband now was here. And so it did feel like a little bit weird. But at the same time, like, it wasn't an experience I'd had before. And so I feel like I kind of had a little bit more adjustment to him being there.
Maybe moving on to sort of like attachments to other figures in your life. Do you ever find that you look for maybe that sort of fatherly role in other people in your life, either in your friends or just other family members? And sort of have you been maybe more attached to them because you feel more connected to your dad through them?
Well, I've got like my uncles and my granddad on my mum's side who kind of always been there to help out because my dad had been ill for I think maybe 11 years before he died. And so he was in and out of hospitals a lot. And so I had my uncles and my granddad there and my aunts and my granny. But we would like go and stay at their houses or just like go around to theirs for the day to like help out with my mum trying to help my dad. And so they were there a lot and they're still there a lot now. Like, they'll give me lifts if my mum can't or something like that. But it's just kind of little things that like kind of fatherly figure attachment to them. What about you with maternal figures? Have you got any?
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot. I think with that it can be really nice, but then sometimes I found that it's maybe affected me slightly negatively because for some reason I always get attached to maternal figures in my life that can't really fulfill that role, if that makes sense. So it's been a lot of teachers, a lot of female teachers. I'm quite lucky that I'm still in touch with one of my sixth form teachers who I actually do still see. But it kind of, there's like a fine line for me where it can turn quite just, I don't know, it just feels quite sad again, because it's just a reminder that they're actually not going to fulfill that role, and you almost don't want them to fulfill the role, because you don't want anyone to fulfill the role of the parent that's not there anymore. So it's like quite conflicting, because then you feel guilty because of that. So yeah, I feel like I've had a few in my life, and I'm quite lucky that some of them have stuck around. But I think I've had to like work a lot with my own relationship with the maternal figures in my life. I'm also quite lucky that I think I look for that maternal connection with some of my friendships as well, which has been quite nice. Have you ever found sort of fatherly figures in your life? Do you ever think that it can be a negative thing, or do you think it's mainly been positive for you?
I think it mainly has been positive. I did, like you were saying with teachers, I had a secondary school history teacher and I felt quite attached to him, and he was really lovely. And I'm not in touch with him like your sixth form teacher, but I did send him like a little postcard after I went to see the bio tapestry, because that had been something that I'd like spoken about with him a lot, and I'd been so excited to go and see it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to tell him that I've done this finally.
That's really nice. I think it's fun. I don't know. I think it's funny with teachers, because I think obviously they do fulfill like a caring role. So I think it's quite easy for that to happen. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good to have those people in your life for sure, especially when you've got, because it is such a massive gap. So it's kind of, and also especially when you did used to have it, I feel like you really miss that gap. And I think that's something, you know, when you lose a parent so young, you're going to constantly grow up and feel that. I don't think that's something that really goes away. I think even when you're older, you still want, you know, your parents' advice. Just to add on kind of to what I was saying before of being attached to parental figures, because I think this is something that I've actually been almost a bit embarrassed about through my grief journey. And I think it's something that I've actually not really heard many people talk about in terms of when they've lost a parent. And I guess I kind of just want to talk about it in case anyone else feels the same way. Because I think people do have these attachments to people. It's kind of similar to what you're saying about the teacher. And I remember feeling that I couldn't really talk about that with my friends, or especially my friends if they hadn't been through the loss of a parent. I just remember thinking, oh, this feels a bit like I'm the only one going through this. And then when I went to sixth form, I was like, oh, that's it. Like, I'm gonna really try, because I need to be able to like do this on my own, as if I didn't need anyone, or especially a maternal figure. And I was just going to do it on my own. And then it kind of just happened, I think because it was through COVID. I spoke about this a lot in episode 1, that I basically felt like my mum had just died again. And I think I really needed that role at that time. And it wasn't even that I went searching for it. It was actually that I shared, this is really loads of random stuff, but I was in like in book club with my college, and I shared about a book that reminded me of my mum, and I'd never shared about my mum dying at sixth form. And I remember the teacher that ran that reached out to me and asked me if I ever wanted to talk about it, that she was more than happy to talk about it with me. And I actually took her up on that offer. And then that kind of led to like going to her regularly and talking about my mum, and she was really open and really helpful and always held space for me. And I think that was really helpful, especially through COVID when it was already so isolating. And as I said before, I'm still in touch with her, and I think she's someone who I'm always going to be in touch with. I don't know, yeah, for anyone who has had a similar experience, I think it's really okay to have these people in your life, but I think it's also good to be mindful and have sort of maybe some boundaries for yourself, just so you don't get too attached, because at the end of the day, yeah, they're not your parent. So that's what I just wanted to say about that, because I think they're really positive. And if anyone is feeling embarrassed about it at all, like I was, I think it's completely okay, and I think you can get a lot out of them, and it's really lovely to have people in your life like that. So the same way with when you sent the postcard to your teacher, I think that's really nice to have, like, just feel like you're connecting with someone in a similar way. using the term love and I love you to the new maybe step parent, especially in your life, or even with the siblings, I say siblings, the step siblings, and whether you say that to them, how comfortable do you feel with saying maybe I love you, or has that ever come up for your family? Have you spoken about it? I don't know if you want to sort of talk about that.
Yeah, it kind of like, I think the first time I really kind of thought about it was when my mum had brought up to me how much like my stepdad loves me and my brother, and like that he actually like cares for us. And it's like taken me a while to kind of get used to it. And I started by kind of saying to my mum that I do love him as well when she would bring up that he loves me and my brother. Like now I do kind of tell him that I love him every now and again, but it's kind of when I feel more comfortable saying it, because I don't want to like force myself to say it if I don't feel comfortable doing it. And I feel like my mum might have spoken to him about that. It's not about making yourself like feel closer to them. You got to kind of stick to your own boundaries. I don't know if you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, I don't know if you've had this maybe with like Mother's Day and Father's Day. I feel like that's something that's come up for my family. Maybe you agree, but I found it hard to say I love you at first. I think it's not even that I don't feel that kind of care or love, but I think it just, again, it's like kind of linked to what we were saying before about feeling a bit guilty about maybe actually loving this person that's in your life now, when you know your actual parent isn't there. Have you ever had anything about Father's Day where you felt maybe, I don't know, please say if you haven't, but if you felt there's an expectation there to maybe act like your stepdad is your dad, or like sort of use that day to celebrate your stepdad, and has that felt a bit weird, or do you just completely not do that? Do you ignore the day in terms of your stepdad? What's that like for you?
I don't do anything with my stepdad. I'll kind of like do something in like celebration of my dad. But yeah, I haven't really done anything for him or with him yet. Although his daughters, I think they send my mum like a present on Mother's Day, or like they'll send her like a nice little message. And so I don't know, it still feels a little bit weird though. I don't know, there's still that kind of level of guilt, like we were saying, and kind of conflict in doing anything on Father's Day other than with my dad.
Yeah, and do you feel, because this is something I've actually thought about, do your stepdad's, was it daughters, do they call your mum stepmum? And does that feel a bit weird as well? How do you feel about that?
And I don't actually know if they call her stepmom or not. I've not really thought about it. I don't know how I would really feel. How does your stepmom's son call your dad their call your dad their stepdad?
Yeah, obviously it's a bit different because, yeah, he does have autism, so he's not as verbal all the time. But I know that my stepmom refers, when she's talking about my dad, will use the word stepdad. And I don't know why sometimes that feels a bit weird, because it's like, well, he actually hasn't his dad around. So he's got his dad and a stepdad. And it's like, well, I've only got my stepmom. And sometimes it feels a bit, yeah, maybe a bit weird, or feels like, yeah, kind of stepping on toes a bit in a weird way. But yeah, I guess in going back to sort of Father's Day and Mother's Day, because I know that my dad sort of, he's not explicitly said, but I think he almost wanted me and my brother to celebrate my stepmom and Mother's Day. And I know to me and my brother that was sort of like, that doesn't feel right, which probably may be similar for you. That it just, I don't want to do that. It doesn't, I feel like that's a day purely that I want to be thinking about my mum. But it obviously then brings in that conflict, because it's like, it's not that I don't like care about my stepmom, and it's not that I don't want to celebrate her as well, but it just, it's, you know, it feels weird to do it on that day. And obviously, is there like a way to do that without it being on Mother's Day or Father's Day? I don't know. Do you have any other way, I guess, apart from birthdays? I don't know, it's something to think about.
Yeah, I don't know, because like what you were saying with them having, and like both their parents, my stepdad's daughters, they have their mum. And so it does kind of feel like a little bit weird to only have like my mum and then a step parent, and then they've still got both of theirs. But yeah, I think the only times we ever really like give him presents or anything is on his birthday and Christmas. We've never like done anything else really with him.
It's the same for me, but then it's like, I don't know. It's almost like maybe you just need another date or something where you do that. But then that feels a bit weird because it's like just for them. So you're missing out on key milestones with your dad, and then how does it feel with some of those milestones going through them with your stepdad instead? Is there a conflict there, or how does that feel for you?
Yeah, because my dad passed away when I was kind of at the end of year 9, and so he's missed out on quite a lot of my like big milestones. But I've had my stepdad there, like when I did my GCSEs and like my A levels, and now that I've come to uni, and like my 18th birthday. And I think it is kind of nice to kind of have some level of like fatherly presence there. But at the same time, there is like the sadness of he's missing out on all of these things, and he's not going to see like any more milestones. But it's still nice to at least have someone there to see it. I don't know if that's the same thing for you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And anything to do with step parents is just always a massive like conflict that comes with it. I feel like I keep using the word conflict today. But yeah, I know what you mean, because my mum died when I was 11, so there's been quite a massive gap where I've not had her around for a few of my milestones. And then my stepmom's probably been around since cause I'm 21 now, probably when I was about 17. So she's been in my life for quite a long time. So she's got to see, I feel like we always use education as a timestamp, but I guess that's the best one. Sort of my GCSEs, and then, or maybe it was 16, GCSEs and A levels, and then same for me, go to university. And it is sad because, yeah, my mum hasn't seen any of that. But then it is nice because there is someone else rooting for you and has a different role, which I think is really nice. But yeah, again, it's kind of, they get to see it, but then, you know, my mum and your dad don't. Yeah, it's a bit bittersweet, I guess, because, yeah, but I also think it is nice because at least someone's there, which is, I think, quite a positive thing.
I remember when I got my A-level results, I had been like so nervous the entire time, especially because I only did 2 A-levels and 1 AS level. And so I had no idea if that would be enough to get me into my universities. And I ended up getting like decent grades and getting into my top uni. And one of the first things that I did after like crying and hugging my mum was calling my stepdad to tell him that I'd got in, because he had been like really nervous and also really excited for me. And so like I felt excited to go and tell him before I then felt sad about my dad not being there. And so whilst I did feel sad that my dad wasn't seeing all of it, it was nice to have another person to go and like be excited with about all this stuff. Like, has that been kind of a similar thing for you?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way that you put it. Because it's almost interesting. It's like a new parental figure in your life. It's actually bringing something completely new. It's kind of like how you say you felt excited to tell him about your A-levels. I always think, like with my stepmom, I would probably go to her for some advice over things like over my dad sometimes, because she's actually a lot better at it than my dad is, or she's really good at like reading essays and stuff. So I do an English and drama degree, which is a lot of like writing essays. So I would never, bless my dad, love him. Sorry, Tim, if he listens to this. I would never probably go to my dad and ask him to read through one of my essays, but I would go to her and she'd be quite good at advice about that, or just with like friendships and things like that. So that's kind of nice.
I think one of the things I miss most is just coming home and seeing him sat in his chair in the window, because he had to retire quite early on. And so throughout, like, I think it might have been most of primary school and up until year 9, every like afternoon I'd come home and he'd be like sat in the kitchen and he'd just like be there, or I'd come back and like I'd wake him up for his nap and then we'd chat about our days and stuff like that. And it's just little things like that I miss, because it was like something very normal and like part of every day for me up until he died. And so kind of not having that. And weirdly enough, he had this sleep apnea machine and I could hear it through my bedroom wall every night. And then all of a sudden the house was quiet. And so that had been quite a jarring thing. I don't know if you've had any like similar experiences like that with just missing little things, or...
Yeah, I think that's really nice that you have those such close memories. But I think for me, I think what I always seem to get is like the kind of random things that will kind of hit me is when I see like my other friends with their mums, and it'll be like really small interactions, or maybe like a phone call, or especially at uni, I think like moving away from home and like living on your own, and for them the person that they go to first is normally their mum. And I find that those things are the things that will really get me. I don't know, like they'll just be texting their mum or ringing their mum and asking about literally advice about anything, about a washing machine or like what wash they should put on or something like that. And that's when it's like sometimes it literally feels like a knife to the heart, because I'm like, I can't do that. I can't just ring my mum up and ask her about, kind of like nothing. Like I just want her to be around to, like for nothing in particular, just for like everyday stuff. So I think that's kind of what I miss the most. And I think those things are always going to be particular to that person. So no matter if, you've got your step parent around, obviously that, they're not going to replace your mum or your dad. So yeah.
I'll be scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or stuff, and I'll see people doing trends with their dad, or just like doing little dances with their dad or something. And it will just make me feel like jealous and sad, because even those like little things, like you were saying, they can do that with him whilst my dad isn't here. And so it just like, 'cause obviously I've got my stepdad and he's there for some things, but it's like it's a different thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned like TikToks. I feel like that's literally where I see all those things. Like I don't know what it is. It's like trends with your dad or trends with your mum. And because also it's so fast paced, you'll just be scrolling and then you see that and you're like, oh, it's like I was happy not thinking about that right now. I was like happy watching this video about what I eat in a day, and now I've got, oh, me and my mum do this, or like like you're saying, like, and it's like, why? Unfortunately, that is, living with grief. I think is those are the things that will get you sometimes. It's not always the big sad days that you think it will be. It will be something like that, which
just catches you off guard.
Yeah. But on the safety of my phone on TikTok, that's when I'm caught off guard. So thank you everyone for listening. That was really insightful. We're talking about parental figures and step parents. I just want to say thank you so much to Toby for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been interesting actually talking in depth about all of this.
It's just nice to know that other people relate to you on these topics.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you everyone for listening to the Grief in Common podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by Talk Grief, powered by Winston's Wish, the UK's first children and young people's bereavement charity.
Listen to young people from different backgrounds have honest conversations about their grief and experiences.
You might hear us laugh, cry, and everything in between.
We hope that these conversations give you the confidence to talk about your own grief. If you're grieving and over the age of 13, this podcast is suitable for you, and we hope it helps you feel less alone.
From teenagers to young adults, students to young professionals, we're all different, but we've all got grief in common. Thank you.